Hey everybody, welcome back for another episode of The Overlay, a poker podcast brought to you by CCG Poker and Paramount Social Club in beautiful Houston, Texas. What's up, Brando?
Your intro bothers me.
Oh, yeah? 81 episodes, you want something different?
Yeah, it's just
what?
you abbreviate CCG, you don't even say Chicago, charitable games, and then Houston's always beautiful, and you get the full Paramount Social Club.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like you're biased.
You know what? Here we go. I would like you to do the intro. Go ahead.
Okay.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Intro.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to what are we doing? An overlay.
There you
go. I would be bad at it. You're right.
Oh, I'm sorry. So somebody who's so bad. Bill, you're like every player on the planet who judges my aces under the gunplay when I win the pot, and you're all like, I would have done it differently.
Well, you could have done it better just because you did it.
One of those.
Doesn't mean you could have done it better. Yeah.
Anyways, hey everybody. Welcome to The Overlay, a poker podcast brought to you by Chicago Charitable Games in beautiful Chicago, Illinois, and Paramount Poker.
See? No, that's better.
It's different. I don't know about better, but it's different. Hey, everybody. Today, we apologize for being gone for so long. We've had spring breaks. We've had vacations. Brandon and I have said 100 times, we got to get down and do some podcasting, but we just haven't been able to find time. But then something cool happened, and not cool. It's just something we both noticed on the old poker Twitter, which is what I think Twitter is just originally named and used for poker players only. Correct?
Yeah, it's pretty
it's prevalent.
I mean, yeah, it's a cultural
unlike other niche. It's not like in the golf industry or other industries. I can't think of anything else. Maybe sports betting, there's a lot of poker players, or I'm sorry, there's a lot of people on Twitter, but I feel like poker in general is a big Twitter community. Everybody twits.
Yeah, because I feel like sports betting is prevalent on TikTok and other social medias where I feel like if you're talking about poker and you're in the poker world,
you should be on TikTok. You should be on the Twitter.
I mean, I'm sorry, on Twitter.
Yeah,
Twitter.
I got you. All right, cool. So today we noticed on the old Alan Kessler Twitter, I did, and Brandon saw the same tweet, about a rules question that just happened over at the WSOP circuit event at the Grand Victoria Elgin location, which I think is still going on right now. It's the main event weekend.
Yeah, it should be day 2 of the main event today.
Yeah. Do we know anybody
who happened during one of the day 1s of the main event?
Yeah. Do we know anybody who made it to day 2 yet?
Anybody good? I didn't look, but I know that the numbers of people advancing, there was only 15 players left from the Thursday flight. So they're going really deep on day 1.
Oh, wow.
I was used to the day 1s where you weren't even in the money yet.
I like that. I like the fact of not having to come back unless I'm in the money. Like that day 2 humble brag that I made at the at the Venetian during the WSOP. It was just their deep stacks, and it was a PLO tournament. And what was it, $1,100 or $1,500 buy-in?
$1,100.
So it's not a cheap tournament. I mean, it's an $1,100 tournament. I played all day Saturday, right? And then day 2 was Sunday. But we got down to 20 players from 200. I mean, it was at 10%. But we weren't in the money. We all came back for day 2, and there were 62 players left, and I think 59 got paid.
Yeah, it was something like that. I think it was in the 50s and 49 got paid. So either way, you were 8 off the money.
It might have even been closer than that. It might have been 4 or 5, which I would have been perfectly fine bubbling if I didn't have to sleep on it, come back the next day, kind of wait because it was a later start. It was a 2 o'clock start. I mean, I could have played something else if I wasn't going to do that or whatever the case may be. I'm a fan of the deep day 1 run. I feel it's a better tournament. It's a better structure. It's better for the players, especially for a guy like you who lives in Indiana. Elgin is an hour and a half away?
Yeah, hour 47.
Dude, that's almost 2 hours. I round that up to 2 hours because I'm going to have to stop and pee one time in an hour and 47 minutes.
I agree.
Right. So now that's a 12-minute stop if I go quickly and there's no line in the bathroom and there's nothing interesting written on the walls. And then now that's 2 hours. So you're telling me I got to go 2 hours home. It's not like you're going to get a hotel out there because you made day 2, but you're not in the money. That's just more expenses. Kudos, WSOP circuit event at Elgin. Good job for making people run deep. Do they at least get in the money if they're in day 2?
Oh yeah, so I know somebody who he cashed Thursday and cashed Friday, but never didn't make day 2.
Oh, okay. So
he cashed
they got
twice,
into the
but
money on
never
day
made
1 and then still played deeper to get a smaller feel for day 2. I love that. I'm totally 100% on board with that. I think that's the best way to do it, personally.
Yeah, I do. I think we run into like the 4 p.m. start times a lot of times for the PLO tournaments.
Yeah.
And then that hinders the ability to play
restarts.
from noon till 2 a.m.
Because what was it?
We're playing 4.
Pre-COVID, I think I played till 3 o'clock in the morning, and then we had a noon start. And for me, who lives an hour and 20 minutes from the Horseshoe
that way,
yeah, that was a tough turnaround. But you and I are used to no sleep, and it's fine. So I can function on a lot. I've been alpha braining lately, so I feel like I can go on 3 hours of sleep. All right.
Alpha brain is legit. Everybody.
Yeah, Joe Rogan's not lying. So if you haven't tried your test alpha brain, Brandon and I, even if it's just a placebo effect, both of us are just on board with this idea. It's just great. I love all of it.
Also, interesting side note, that Venetian cost you $1,100. That's a shame because it cost me $2,200.
Mm-hmm.
But then you didn't end up cashing, right? So that's why it sucks, because you walked all the way back to Treasure Island, you slept on it, you had to replan your whole next day around it.
And to go back to the Twitter idea, I did tweet out, I was like, oh, May day 2 got 80,000 in chips, blinds are bop. I had put it out there, and I was kind of excited. And I think they even rolled back 2 levels because of the weird day 1s where they were our field was 215, and the first day 1 was 180, which is still pretty damn close, but they had played deeper into the evening or something. I don't know. They were trying to get to 10% and then cut it off. And then we ended up cutting it off. It was a weird, again, this kind of goes to the whole idea of today's. But I put it out there on Twitter, and everyone's like, way to go, day 2, good, congratulations. I was like, but I'm not in the money yet.
Yeah, right. Awesome. Day 2 is amazing. I just wasted another day.
Yep. Played for 20 minutes.
If you cost average $1,100 over 2 days, it only costs you $550 a day.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I like it, because I probably saved money in the long run, because I would have played that mystery bounty or something else over at the WSOP that I wouldn't have. But talking about tournament structures and tournament rules and tournament directors in general and how difficult of a job they have, we're going to do another episode on, what are we doing, Brando? Do it in your cool movie guy voice. Go.
I don't know.
Beyond the rule book.
Oh, that's what you wanted me to
do. That.
I see. No, beyond the rule book.
We'll work on it for next time. Beyond the rule book. So on Poker Twitter, Alan Kessler put out I think it was at his table, or at least he was aware of the situation. I mean, he's a pretty
definitely at his table.
Okay, so and he's a big rules buff. So this is kind of an interesting, I don't know, an interesting rules situation. I'm going to try to explain it. Brandon laughs hysterically whenever I try to tell poker stories.
Do you want me to explain it? Because I can.
No, I want to do it because I want to see if I can get through one. Because I think this is an easy one. Okay?
All right.
Blinds are 200, 400. There are a couple of limpers. Small blind calls. The big blind, who has a $500 chip in the pot, blinds are 200, 400, announces raise and throws in a 1K chip. The question is, what is the raise?
That's pretty good.
Dead air. I know. I finally got it because it was so simple. Because there was no because normally I'm like, wait. So then the middle position called, and then
you did screw up. Nobody called. It was just small blind versus big blind.
Oh, it was? Fuck.
Yeah.
I was so close to getting it right. Okay, so all folds to the small blind, who calls. Big blind announces raise. There's a clear raise. Chips in a 1K chip, punts in a 1K chip, just gradually tosses in a 1K chip. And the question is, what is the actual raise? Because he didn't announce a number. He just threw in a chip. And it gets a little weird.
Does get a little weird. So, your immediate instinct would be, well, it's 1,500 because there's a $500 chip and the guy said raise and now there's 1,500.
Correct.
So, how could it not be
1,500?
And
do we actually know what they ruled it?
I don't actually know what they ruled it.
Yeah, I don't think he put that out there because it's so much more fun to argue about it and try to figure out. Like
he said, there was some discussion about it.
Yeah,
yeah. So what do you think?
When I answered the poll on Twitter, I put down 1,500, and that was by far the most. That was the most popular answer on Twitter.
There was 3 options, right? It was 15, 14, or unsure.
Unsure.
And 15 had like.
Which I also, not to diss Mr. Kessler here, I don't like those 3 options. I felt like there could have been more options, but maybe he didn't want to give away any other of the answers or any other thoughts. But yeah, it was either 1,400, 1,500, or other. And I think like 60% of the people it shows.
I think like 68% was.
I'm trying to find it on Twitter right now if I can seize it. But
oh man, he's busted that main event like 4 times since then. You're gonna have to go back.
Yeah, I'm looking at it now. There's a lot going on here. Mr. Kessler, he's sent it out as 0 bracelets. He's got 3 rings.
That sounds about right.
That's what it says.
I thought he had a bracelet.
No bracelets.
That's slightly
3 rings, 216 cashes, 2.1 million in earnings, which is pretty good. Okay, for all of you claiming I only post losing all ins, nope, that's not it. Here we go. Rules question: 200, 400 blinds. So has 2 chips. Small blind has 2 $100 chips out. Big blind has 1 $500 chip out, which is perfectly fine. The dealer's not going to make change at that point until the action is basically closed. Folds to the small blind, so I was wrong. Small blind calls. Big blind says raise. And he's very clear about this. Doesn't touch the $500 chip and throws out a 1K chip. What bet is the small blind facing? And the options are 1,400, 1,500, unsure / slow results. Meaning if you don't want to guess, you can know. I mean, this thing's got a lot of, mildly viral on Twitter. I mean, it's got almost 30,000 hits. It's got 3,500 votes in just the first 48 hours, which is a lot, Yeah,
of course.
Can you go over? I said 1,500, and that's the most popular answer by far. 80% of the people who have voted on this, I am now the 3,466th vote. 80%, 79.3% say 1,500 is the bet, which I would assume, not taking any rules into consideration, that logically the bet would be 1,500. He's got 2 chips out there, a 500 and a 1K. The bet's 1,500. He said raise, but now Alan mentions this idea of doesn't touch the $500 chip. Can you go into a little bit of detail about why that's important, or what he's referring to of why it would be important about the chip that was already out there?
Yeah, so I think that is where the importance of the whole thing really is. I mean, at least from an argument standpoint, because if you look at like small blind built rules and stuff like that, or at least rules in the blinds, they kind of treat them as, dead money.
They don't count. Right.
They don't really count. And it's the idea of the same situation of 200, 400. If that small blind guy had 2 black chips and then he just threw out an oversized 1K chip right on top of those 2 black chips, like that would still be a call, even though there was 1,200 out there, because they treat those 2 black
they're
chips
dead, even though there's 3 chips in the pot. And you're like, well, how does the 1 chip rule apply here? Because I have 3 chips in the pot. You don't count those 2.
Right.
You don't count those chips.
Right. That 1K,
so if you wanted to make it right, so if you wanted to make it 1,200, how would you do it?
You'd have to pick up those 2.
You pick up the chips. 2, right? You pick up the 2 chips. Now, as just a little even more in-depth rules here, if you pick up your small blind, or if you pick up chips out of the pot that you've previously put in, whether it be a blind, a called bet earlier, what are your options at that point? If you take chips out of the pot, what are your options?
Raise,
or
that's it, right?
There's only 3 options. You got call, bet, or fold.
Okay, well, you can't fold.
Yep. Can you call?
If you are the small blind?
Let's just say,
you're a small blind. You can pull them out.
Yeah, if you take chips out of the pot, Meaning if you've
Call
got,
raise.
right, like the blinds are, 200, 400, right? Yep. And let's say that whatever this bet is, and there was a limper inside there who called 400. Like, I could take my 400 chips out and then put in whatever the bet is. Now, I'm not going to say what the bet is because we don't know what it is. 15, 14, 1,000, 800. We have no fucking idea. But if I take chips out of the pot that I had previously put in, the only two options you have are either to call or to raise. That's pretty clear. Prior bet chips not pulled in. If facing a raise, clearly pulling a prior bet chip binds a player to either call or raise. He or she may not put the chips back out and fold. Meaning if you touch your chips, I guess if you just touch them, then, and you pull them towards you, I guess it's that action. I guess because sometimes when I fold, I just throw my chips in and then fold. I guess that's probably a bad thing that could be misconstrued as touching chips, but you never actually pulled them in. But if you pull chips back out of the pot, you don't have an option to fold anymore. Your options are either to raise or call. You don't get any other options.
My question is, say it limps to that big blind, just whatever. Somebody limping the button, and then the small blind completes, and then that big blind now pulls his single 500 chip out of the pot. Like he just pulls back his 500. Like, does he have to raise, or he can still just like put in 4 black and say check?
See, that's a good option because like the weird thing. No, I mean by the rules, there's no clarification on there. He only has 2 options. He or she only has one option. The big blind only has one option. If I take that 500 out and I realize I have $400 in black chips, and I could put out the 4 black chips, and that would be the call of 400.
Okay,
that would be fine. Or I could take my $500 chip out and then throw in a 1K or 1,500, whatever the case may be. I mean, he did say raise, obviously, but we're kind of getting deep into this to figure out what it is. I think the act of not touching the chip is what really throws this into a loop. And there's really also no very distinct clarification of what to do in the big blind. There's a lot of stuff to do with the small blind because you gave that exact example. If the small blind did the exact same thing, obviously if he said raise and then threw out a 1K chip, would the bet be 1,200 then?
If he said raise and threw out a 1K chip, that's a great question. It should be 1,000, right?
Correct. Yeah, because again, you're not supposed to count the 2 chips that are already in there. It gets weird, and it's very funny because it literally says, let me read this here.
Read it slow because it's kind of hard to understand. You've read me this rule like 8 times.
I know, and there's really no good answer. It's going to be an interpretation for the tournament director to find out, which is why this is why it's called Beyond the Rule Book, right? Because there's no specific rule that says if the player X puts in a 1K chip with 500 extra, he's supposed to get change back because he may get a 5. Because that's the weird thing. Like, he's got more chips in the pot than he needed to anyways. So what is he actually trying to do? And I'm trying to find where it says trying to read and talk at the same time, which is not great.
It seems hard. And I was about to ask you a question, which also seemed hard.
Yeah, throw that in there too.
My question, I guess, for like everybody or you is like, so saying raise and then throwing out that 1K chip isn't enough to make it 1,200, but just picking up those 2 and throwing all 3 together. So there's a difference between saying raise and throwing out 1 chip than picking up the 2 black chips with a 1K chip and throwing all 3 out together.
Correct.
Okay.
So again, just logically speaking, if there's a difference between, if I don't say anything and I throw out a 1K chip in the small blind, let's just stick with the small blind because it's a little easier to go with. Small blind does the same thing, slightly changes it. Small blind A throws out a 1K chip. What did they do there? Like, it's weird. We don't know what their intention is. If they were to take out the chips and throw it in, then that's a difference as well. Because now we know it's 1,200 because he took chips out and then threw 3 chips in. It's $1,200. You don't have to say anything. You just threw in 1,200. We know it's 1,200. If the player said raise, doesn't touch the 2 black chips, and throws out a 1K chip, now we got to try to figure out what the hell it is there. Is it 1,000? Is it 1,200? I think the only 2 options there would be 1,000 or 1,200, but it gets weird with that small blind chips being in there, and they're not supposed to actually count towards any kinds of bet. They're, like you said, they're not dead money, but they're not included. that's why if you'd have just thrown in an oversized chip, it would have been a call on the not saying raise.
But if you say raise, throw out a 1K chip, and then simultaneously pull back the two 1200s, like that would be clearly 1,000.
Correct.
Which makes me feel like if you say raise and you chuck a 1K chip on top of your two 1200s, that should be 1,200. Based on the fact that if you pick up the two chips and throw all three out, it's 1,200. And based on the fact that if you pull back, if you say raise and pull back the two black chips, that's 1,000. You know, that's like clearly one way and clearly the other way.
Right.
This is the middle ground here of chucking the 1K chip on top of the two blacks.
Well, if you say raise, throw in a 1K chip, your argument is that it should be how much? 1,200?
I say it should be 1,200 based on like the two parameters of we know exactly what's 1,000, which is him saying raise and pulling back the two black. We know exactly which is 1,200, which is him picking up the two black, or him or she, whatever, picking up the two black with the 1K chip and throwing all three out together. That's clearly 12. The other one's clearly 1,000. This one is in the middle, which it really, we're saying by the rule book, there's no rule. It could be both, right? Because
you could go either way.
If we're not counting those 200, it's clearly 1,000. But I mean, the guy said raise, and now there's 1,200 chips in the pot. How is it not 1,200?
Right. Same argument though, which gets weird because it's this extra layer of stuff. We're on the big blind, so let's just use all of those things together. Let's say he had 4 black chips out there, said raise, threw in a 1K chip. What would the bet be? By your definition, we're going to go with 1,400. Right?
Yeah.
He's got 1,400 chips out there. He said raise. He didn't take his chips out of the pot, which means he's now got 5 chips in the pot. Should be 1,400. The only weird aspect to that causes a little bit of argument is that he was supposed to get change out of the pot anyways and didn't touch it. So it's like, now is the bet 15 or 14? Because theoretically,
that extra 100 on there that's out there because he doesn't have change,
right? But
really isn't out there,
right? Yeah.
You know, because there's 500 chips out there, but there's really only 400 chips out there. There's not. Yeah. The blinds aren't 200, 500. He has 400 chips out there, regardless of how they're out there, and he needs change for them. So, like, by him announcing raise and throwing that 1K chip on top of the 500, in my eyes, that shouldn't, like, add that extra 100. Like, that 100 bonus doesn't get grandfathered into the situation.
Right.
Which is why my answer is 1,400. Because he is raising. I like the fact that, like, I like the view of, like, oh, I'm raising 1,000 here. Like, think of it that way. If he's saying, if he said raise 1,000, like if he
then it would be 1,000.
Let's just say he said raise 1,000 on top,
which I hate. I hate when people do that. I think it's the worst idea.
Then that would clearly be 1,400, right? Because that'd be 1,000 on top of his 400. If he said I raised 1,000 more, 1,000 more, 1,000 on top, anything more than just saying. Raise.
I think you get into a dangerous position saying that. It's like the idea of a player saying, I put you all in. Like, that's not a real raise. I feel like 1,000 on top. I get the idea that you're saying it's 1,000 on top, but like, it's really weird. It's so funny because in all of these things, it says in here, like, raise amounts. Without other clarifying information, declaring raise and an amount is the total bet. Example, A opens for 2,000, B declares raise 8,000. The bet is 8,000. It's not I raise 8,000 plus your 2,000, which makes it 10,000. I feel like you get into a weird scenario by saying things like 1,000 on top. I think the number one rule here that we should take away from this podcast is that you should just say the number of what you want. Otherwise, you run into the total number. Otherwise, and it's literally in underline. In no limit or pot limit, a raise must be made by A, pushing out the full amount in one motion, or B, verbally declaring the full amount prior to pushing out chips. It is, underlined now, it is the responsibility of players to make their intentions clear. So if you are unclear, I don't think any poker player has a leg to stand on about arguing to do it, because conceivably you're either A, you're trying to angle shoot, or B, You screwed up. It's your own damn
You're
fault.
being the unclear one here.
Correct. It's not like the small blind screwed up.
Interpret.
Correct. Like you screwed up.
Going back to that 1,000 more, because based on that rule right there, if the big blind would have said raise 1,000,
that's why I said, yeah,
it would have been 1,000 all day.
Correct.
Total.
Yep.
Which is where now he's trying to like.
No, I said 1,000 on top. Well,
or 1,000 more is clearly different than 1,000 in this spot.
Because, like, again, is it weird for me to say I put you all in? Because I said the words all in, but I prefaced it with saying I put you all in. Let's say there's a short stack at the table and he's got 10K in chips. We're deep in a tournament and I got 80,000 and the guy behind me who's still left to act has 160,000. And I say, I put you all in and point at the short stack, meaning I'm trying to bet 10,000 in chips. And then the guy with the bigger chip stack than you snap calls, goes, call. Did you bet 10,000 or did you say all in? Because you said all in, but you said, I put you all in. Like, that's one of those weird stories where it's like, you're better off just saying what you want to do. Ask the player for a count.
If the guy has 90,000 and you're trying to bet enough so that he has to call all in and lose.
Ask, how much do you have?
Say 90,000.
Right.
Now, I put enough to put. Well, you had 200,000. You said the words all in. You can't put somebody else all in for 90,000. You're all in for 200,000.
Right.
Sorry.
I think it's the same idea of saying 1,000 on top. You don't say that. Don't say I'll put you all in.
Right. I think the verbiage of all day is very good.
Yep. I say all day.
If that guy would have said 1,500 all day, or whatever, 1,500 works.
So officially,
anything but raise in a single chip, that's going to get trouble.
And I mean, and there's rules
especially
here for
from the blinds.
Especially from the blinds. Big blind apparently is the worst one because we don't know, and especially if you've got change due from your big blind, that's another weird one. If the guy had just picked up his 500 and threw out the two chips to 15, like then he doesn't have to say anything. It's like you have to be super clear. If you're one of those players, I don't understand it. I'm a player who verbalizes every single bet I make. I never put chips in a pot until I say the number I want. Never in any game do I play do I not say the number I want to bet before I touch any chips. And the worst is when I say 2,000 and the guy's putting his chips in before I even get to my stack. And I'm like, fuck, that was the wrong bet. I hate when they beat me into the pot. But they have a chance to beat me in the pot because I always verbalize what I want. I don't think that in any games, 90% of the games that the players that we know and play around in WSOP events and like the medium to size like WSOP, like the actual WSOP events and charity poker and poker in Texas, like the caliber of players that we're playing with, you're not going to give away any information by saying a number that you want to bet versus the negative aspect of it of screwing up and putting out a wrong amount that will cost you so much more in the long run. I feel like the risk reward there of this guy's going to get a read on me because I said 1,500, like versus I just put out some chips and the dealer's like, well, that's wrong. Like it's only a call and I intended to raise or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, or I didn't say anything and threw out one chip and now it's just a call because, well, no, I meant to make it 5,000. Yeah, but you didn't say anything. So we don't know that. So it's just a one chip rule and that's just a call. Let's go to the turn. And then you lose to the flush draw and you're pissed about it. And it's like, man, I was trying to be super sneaky by not giving away, my voice. And I'm a firm believer in, you should just say the amount. You will get yourself in far less trouble, and I don't think there's enough negative connotation that's worth trying to just put chips in the pot, and the chance of screwing something up is pretty good.
I agree. Yeah. I also think that the biggest tip is
my
you
small
should really
just.
It's all right. I mean, you always just need to be picking up those big blind and small blind chips if
you want to raise,
want them to be included.
Yeah, if you want to raise, pick them up, throw them back in. It seems redundant, or you know what? That seems like a pain in the ass, Brandon. Is there an easier way to do it?
Yeah, just say 1,500.
That's a fucking pain in the ass, Ken. Why would I do that? Oh, I'm sorry. Would it be far easier just to say 1,500? And they go, okay. And then you can fumble around with your chips all you want. Like you can.
It could be on 4 people. Four people can act. And
doesn't matter.
1,500 out there.
I already acted. I told you what I want. Race 2,000. Cool. Next player. Like I don't even like if I'm dealing. I don't even look at what chips they're putting out, because by the time I pull the pot in, I'm going to make sure they got 2,000 in there. But they got all the time in the world to put out their chips. Just say what you want. So the only nice thing about online poker.
Well, the guy did say what he wanted. He said race.
Yeah, you're right. He said what he wanted. It's like going to the.
I was trying to come up with an analogy.
I got one. It's like going to dinner, and the waiter comes over and says, "Hello, sir. What would you like today?" Potato. The fuck does that mean? Potato? You have no idea what you're going to come back with. Baked potato, French fries, other
you can order a
hash
potato.
browns. You're at McDonald's. They don't even sell potatoes. The kid in the back's looking like, I don't know what to do. What do we do? He ordered a potato. I don't just give him a potato, guys. Just put it in the bag. I don't know. What do you do with it? There's so many different options that you can come up with. But if you said, I'd like a large French fry, please, the chances of you getting that right are much better than just getting a random potato put in your bag. Like a steak. Cool. You want that in a sandwich? You want it like chopped up? You want it in a salad? You want me to make you a steak and shake? I don't know. I'm getting off topic here, but
you're doing your own kind of thing. This is what's entertaining. Not us.
I guess. Depends. 30,000 downloads. Can't be wrong. Ken's rants must be better than we think. Suck on that, poker Twitter.
So wrapping us all back around here, I'm going with 1,400.
I agree.
Because
I think
the guy's raising
right
1,000 on top of 400,
right?
Regardless of how many chips he has out there, what those represent or anything like that.
Yep.
It's obvious if he picks up the 500 chips and throws them up together, that extra 100 then now gets granted because he put 1,100 more chips than was actually in there, which makes sense of a raise of 15.
Basing this off of if it was a small blind who said raise, threw out a 1K chip and left his 2 black chips in there, we would all consider that to be 1,200. But being the fact that we're giving it the same kind of scenario for the big blind, but he doesn't get to count that extra money in the pot. What if he had put in a 1K chip? What if it was a 1K chip on a $200, $400 blinds? Let's say that's all he had. He had 5 1K chips left, and he's a big blind, puts out a 1K chip. Comes back to him, he says raise, throws in another 1K chip. What's the bet then?
Still got to be 1,400.
Still got to be 1,400 because the player only had 14 in there, 400 in there, and even though it's like only 100, like it's got to be 15. No, like it's the same principle. What if he had a 5K chip in there? Is it about 6,000? I mean, no. Probably should have said how much he wanted. I think that's the last idea. Just say what you want. Bottom line, you don't need to go to the beyond the rulebook rules if you just say what you want to do. It's nice. Poker players need to be more definitive.
Last thing here, just to cover all of our bases.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going back to the small blind, just creating hypothetical here because I have my mind made up on what I think the big blind is. I'm trying to come up with stuff I don't have my mind made up on, and what's coming to me is say the small blind had a 500 chip out for their 200, and then they said raise, and then threw a 1K chip. We would have to make that 1,200, right?
Yeah, now we're getting deeper here because then that scenario, I feel like, I don't know.
Okay, but if that's 1,500, then the big blind, that should be the same. They should be across,
no, you're right. Even, it's the same.
You know what I mean?
This is why it's not. There's not a specific rule. 42-B says if you have X in and like that's what it counts. Like it doesn't say
because
that.
I'm having trouble saying that that would be 1,200 in my mind. I'm like, oh, that's 1,500.
Mm-hmm.
But no, that and he has 200 out there and he raised 1,000 more. Like it's 1,200.
Yeah, no,
which is why you just got see. That's why now this is why I think like however you choose as a tournament director, like you should be consistent. Like you can't let the small blind be 1,500, but then the big blind, that's a technicality. It's only 14. You know what I mean? Like they should be the same across the small blind and the big blind because they're the exact same situation, just with oversized chips for the wrong amounts for their blinds because they don't have change. But So that's goofy, which is why we decided to make a podcast episode of it, because
even still now I'm waffling. It's like
right.
It's like
I was 100% sure.
Yeah.
And now I'm not.
Now I'm waffling again. Now I'm thinking it should be 800. I don't know.
Stop it.
It's just that, I mean, you could make an argument for it. Be like, well, he threw in an oversized chip, so we don't know what it is, so we got to take the smallest chip out and see how much it is to raise, which it is. It's goofy as shit. I don't know. It's so weird. If facing a bet or a blind, pushing out a single, including, if raise is declared but no amount is stated, the raise is the maximum allowable for the chip. Well, let's just go with this.
Okay, but that's the raise.
No,
that's
yeah.
The amount.
This is hold on. This is oversized chip betting. If facing a bet or a blind, pushing out a single oversized chip, including your last chip, which is always a big one, and it's a big no-no, is a call, right? So like if it would be a call. If the raise isn't first declared, meaning if you didn't say raise, you threw out your last chip, that's just a call, even though you intended to raise. To raise with an over chip, you must declare raise before the chip hits the table surface, which this player did. If the raise is declared but no amount is stated, the raise is the maximum allowable for the chip. So let's just read that for a second. It's the maximum amount for that chip, which means he threw in a 1K chip. The maximum amount that player could bet is 1,000, but he had 400 in the pot, so the bet should be 1,400. We don't count we don't count his change included
on top of 400.
Of the 400. Yeah. Correct. Yeah, which I kind of like. So the same principle. If you got two black chips in the small blind, I say raise, throw out a 1K chip. It's the maximum amount allowable for the chip that I threw in, which would be the 1,000 chip plus the two black chips is 1,200. I think that is 100% the answer. I'm much more convinced of that now. That if he says raise. Or she say, well, I say she. Ladies never do this. They're way more intuitive and
right. They're like,
they're on another level. Yeah,
dummies.
Like Jill Bryant is never making this mistake. She just fires out 1,500. Boom, fold, small blind. Do you know who I am?
Jill's also never raising with one chip. So she's firing out 9 chips. It's always a raise.
Sure.
You know, it's never. I'm not just going to race with one time.
No.
Here's 6
two.
of them.
At least 2. Right. Just going to pile in a bunch of chips and be like, figure that one out, kid. You're right. So it's definitely a man who did this because we're not as bright. So I'm going to stick with that. So I like this idea. If you say raise, throw out an oversized chip, it's the maximum amount allowable for that chip. And he had 400 in the pot, which means it's 1,400. You cannot make it 1,500 just because there was change back. Like, I think that's the definitive rule. So I'm going to go with that. Cool. That was Beyond the Rulebook with Brandon and Ken. Way beyond the rulebook.
Yeah, it's deep.
Yeah, I think it's, again, I just think the bottom line, and it's something I've said and we've said, I mean, it's the player's responsibility to make your intentions clear. If you leave anything up to kind of subjective kind of
instructions.
If it's up to somebody else's discretion, you might get screwed, and you have nobody to blame but yourself because you didn't just say what you wanted. If you wanted to make it 1,500, just say 1,500, and then you're done. You don't have to say anything. Raise 1,500. Raise 6,550. That would be a Jill raise, which is awesome.
But again, this isn't about. We all know. If I'm sure some of you guys are listening are like, what does it matter? It's 1,500 or 1,400. Like, it's the same thing. It is the same thing, but like, it still deserves to get picked apart on what's right or wrong and like how you go about to make these decisions. And
well, what if
that's
it was
the problem with tournament directing is there's a lot of stuff that isn't in the rule book, and now it's up to you to keep the integrity of the game, in squared up, and obviously making it 1,500 versus 1,400 is
not a huge difference. But what if the blinds
not a huge
were
difference in the hand? But
right.
You set some precedent, there
right.
where something can come up later where it's thousands different, but
correct.
in the same situation.
What if the blinds were 5,000, 10,000? I mean, I don't know how you would put out extra.
And he had only a 25K chip or something.
Correct.
Whatever.
Right, and he had a 25K chip out there and threw another 25K chip on top, and he only had 3 chips left, 75K total, and his intention was to do a little stop and go, bet 50K. He said raise, threw it out there. It's like, well, wait, hold on. You had the blinds are 10,000. And so you got 15,000 and change coming, and then you threw another 25K on top and said raise. Were you trying to make it 50? Were you trying to make it 35? Were you trying to make it 25 all day? Like, it's super weird. Now you're talking about a player who's at the final table of a tournament, and he's only got 75K in chips, like less than 8 big blinds here, and including what's already in the pot. So, I mean, you really got less than that if you screw this up. Like, that's where it gets bigger and the decision's much broader, and it's a lot more difficult, where it's like, well, wait, what is the actual rule here? Like, that's a perfect example. If they had a 25K chip out there because that's all they had, what would the bet be then? I mean, we said it's the maximum amount allowable for the big chip, which is the 25,000, plus they had 10,000 in the pot, so the bet now would be 35,000. The player's getting back 15,000 and change. And now he's got 35 behind, 35 in the pot, and probably regrets his decision for not saying 50,000. Right?
I mean, yeah, 35,000 behind or 40,000 behind.
Whatever.
But
you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do know what you mean.
Right.
I just know.
25K chip plus 15. Yeah, you're right.
35,
40,
70K.
Right.
How are you going to get 3 25K chips and then have 70K? See, this dealer sucks.
You got ousted of 5K for just stupid penalty.
For just being stupid.
Right.
There should really be penalties like
100%. Penalty should not be warning, 10-hand penalty, disqualification. It should be warning, 50K, like 5 big blind penalty. You can play all of them.
5 big blinds, 20 big blinds.
Yeah, you lose 5 big blinds. Like, what?
I love it.
And if you're out of the tournament, then you bust. Like, sorry, I told you not to do it again. It's going to cost you 5 big blinds. I only got 6 left. Guess you're all in on the next hand. I recommend you say all in, not just do something stupid, like throw out a chip, not say anything. Anyways, thanks for listening to The Overlay. As always, we are on Twitter at The Overlay Pod. You can catch me and Brandon anytime in Chicago and occasionally in Texas. And we will be at the WSOP this summer in beautiful Las Vegas-y, and there's nothing better than summer in the desert, right, Brando?
That's true. It's a dry heat.
Because I'm always cold in the poker rooms, and then I walk outside, I'm like wearing a hoodie. I'm like, shit, it's hot.
Yeah, like what am I doing? Yeah,
I got jeans and gym shoes on, but it's not like I want to wear shorts and be cold in the room. Anyways, next week on The Overlay, what to wear in a poker room. Actually, next week we're going to do another rules thing about promotions and how to not screw up the bad beat jackpot. We'll catch you next time. Lead us out of here, Brando.
Farewell.
See you, everybody.